Sergio Perez, of course, taking his second career win, his first win in the Red Bull. First time someone who isn't called Max Verstappen has taken a win for Red Bull since the Monaco Grand Prix of 2018. So give or take 3 years, it's been a long time. He was helped, obviously, by Max Verstappen. His tyre going out towards the end of the Grand Prix. He overcut Lewis Hamilton earlier in the race, so recovered from just a P6 on the grid to take the win. Sam, do you think that this was a bit of a transformational weekend for him? Do you think this is the first weekend of the old Sergio Perez almost?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start with a little disclaimer. I don't think this was perfect from Sergio Perez. There were still mistakes in there that I feel like he got away with. For example, going long in the pit box meant that he couldn't jump Max Verstappen for an actual chance at the race win until the incident happened. He was not great off the restart from the standing starting, got jumped by Vettel and did get jumped by Hamilton until Hamilton realised that he'd left the magic on, which I might make a t-shirt of, to be honest. But Sergio Perez, I think, drove. It's why I didn't give Perez driver of the day, and that's why I gave Vettel driver of the day. Perez, for me, drove like a 95% race, and I do think, of course, he thoroughly deserved to take home the victory, and I'm glad he did. It was fantastic to see him take his second career victory. But yes, overall, this is what I expected from Sergio Perez. High-class pace, pushing his teammate to the very end, making tyres last. The guy knows how to drive a race car, and he can do it very, very quickly. This is what I wanted. And when I said that Perez was going to beat Bottas in the championship, I think it was going to be close. Ha! Joke's on me once again. Perez absolutely flying at the moment now. I think this is going to be a progression. I think we're going to see this start to come in race after race after race. Red Bull have the wingman that they need. Red Bull gives you wings. Well, they've got one. They've got a wingman in Sergio Perez, and I do think they can mount a full challenge. And look, they now lead the Constructors' Championship by an absolute furlong. They need Mercedes to really come home with a big 1-2 in France next time out. And I don't think it's going to happen. I think Red Bull are in their stride. Perez has got things going now. And Max, this is unfortunate for Max. This was not Max's fault. Max is really up and going. So I think those two are a fully potent team. And I think Perez can really start to bring home the results. I would not be shocked if Perez gets 2 or 3, 4 more wins this season.
What do you think, Harry? Do you think this was a bit of a turnaround performance?
I mean, it's by a mile his best and his most consistent this year, isn't it? We've seen glimpses of it, but not across the whole weekend. I mean, again, as I said, it wasn't perfect. Quality wasn't great. That first run he did in Q3 wasn't great at all. But yeah, I don't know whether we can call it transformational because I think it depends what happens in the next race or so. If that carries on, then yeah, it's good news for good news for Checo, good news for Red Bull. We saw today how much better it was for Red Bull to have Checo in the mix because it was Hamilton versus two Red Bulls, so they could play with the strategy like Mercedes do to Verstappen or have done to Verstappen on so many occasions. So yeah, yeah. As I said it earlier, his pace was insane in the race. I think that first stint particularly, and then Checo's been around a long time, but he did have Lewis Hamilton on his gearbox for most of the race, and that's quite intimidating. Especially every time he pulled a gap in the middle sector, Hamilton was like, "Nope, I'm coming back in the straight line speed." So yeah, it was definitely the Checo we're used to. So I'm hoping that this is, as you say, a transformational weekend. Remains to be seen, but it was definitely very, like Seb, it was very encouraging to see that kind of performance from him.
Yeah, this was a great performance from Sergio Perez, without a doubt the best that he's had in a Red Bull so far. You're right, Sam, definitely not flawless. You know, he was due to lose out to his teammate. We can't take that away from Max Verstappen. But he was there, and ultimately that's what Red Bull need. When something like that happens to Verstappen, they need to know that Sergio Perez is in a very good position to either win the race instead of Max, or at least be in second or third, which he was. So fair play to him. He drove a really good race, and he got the first lap that he needed. He was frustrated after qualifying, and I think rightly so because he did have that pace. He's had a few iffy qualifying so far this season, but it's almost been as if, yeah, that's about where his pace is. So it's not overly gutting on the day. Whereas yesterday, I feel as if he probably felt he did have a chance at the front row of the grid. And he was able to recover to the point where that became somewhat obsolete as the race went on. And We saw the way that the strategy played out. Hamilton had that pit stop issue, of course, that ended up taking about 2 seconds longer than he would have liked. And because they had the two cars in position to do something about it, it did give them a bit of flexibility. The option that they went for worked perfectly, even with the slow pit stop for Perez. It worked perfectly. Verstappen pitted the lap after, and then Perez the lap after that. That's the strategy they went with. But the beauty of the situation is because they had two cars, they didn't even need to do it that way if they wanted to. They could have, if they didn't feel they had that margin, they could have pit Verstappen the next lap, as they did. They could have asked Perez to do exactly what Vettel did if they felt that was worth it. They could have, they could have double stacked them if they felt that was worth it. It just opens up the strategy playbook way more when you've got the two drivers in there. The way they did it ended up perfectly, but the options are there at least to do something if they wanted to. And Christian Horner, he said that he might have got past Max Verstappen if it wasn't for the pit stop issue. I was looking at the timing screens quite intently. I think it would have been close. I personally think Verstappen would have had about 7 tenths of a second on Perez. So who knows? Perez might have had an opportunity when they eventually got round to sector 3 and back down the start-finish straight. If he was still close enough at that point, I don't think he would have quite beaten him at the pits, but he was at least in the conversation. And ultimately, this is what Red Bull have been searching for this entire time. I would say at this point, and I think this is something that we all agree on, really, but there's been a lot of comparisons first 5 races of the season compared to Albon's first 5 races at Red Bull and Gasly's first 5 races at Red Bull. Stop it, because Perez is not in the same position that those two drivers were in. Gasly was in probably the 3rd best car at the time. Albon was definitely in the 2nd best car at the time, but it wasn't a championship winning car. This, even if you think Mercedes has a minor edge or if you think Red Bull has a minor edge, this is a car that is capable of winning a championship. Neither Gasly or Albon had that at their disposal. So if you're just comparing points, don't bother. There's no point. But having said that, if we just look at pace versus Verstappen, which is a way more accurate indicator as to how well he's doing, that was, in terms of pace, the closest the Red Bull teammate has been to Verstappen since Daniel Ricciardo. I don't think Gasly or Albon have ever been that close in pace to Verstappen. So really encouraging from him. And we'll have to see whether he takes it forward or not. And from one extreme to the other, of course, Valtteri Bottas was off the pace pretty much all day. Struggled to make an overtake on Lando Norris, wasn't really threatening outside of that, and then on old tyres slipped back a few more positions at the end of the Grand Prix. Sam, going forward now, having seen Bottas's performance today, having seen Perez's performance today, who would you trust more as a secondary driver from here on out?
Oh, 100% Perez. I lost faith in Bottas quite a while ago. I do feel like Bottas has been secure in the motion that Mercedes were that much better as a team than the rest of the grid, that realistically, you put in an acceptable performance in that Mercedes, you should be on the podium, really. And I think that most drivers on a good day in any previous Mercedes could put that car on the podium. Let's just say you put Ocon in there, you get a podium. You put Gasly in there, you get a podium. You put Bottas in there, you'll get a podium. But now we're in a year where that Mercedes is not capable of just walking away with the championship. We're not able to just run off the road and just be Hamilton, Bottas, Bottas, Hamilton, Hamilton, Bottas. Bottas has flares of brilliance, just like any driver. They're the best drivers in the world. They're going to have moments of brilliance. Bottas is not consistent enough. The Bottas, I call him, folks, he's not able to deliver alongside Lewis Hamilton. He can't extract the absolute last mounts of pace out of that car. And now that Mercedes is being threatened by Red Bull, definitely, but also Ferrari are on pace in certain tracks. McLaren are definitely there as well. And you're going to think Aston Martin, Alpine and the likes could definitely start to challenge. It's possible. Bottas isn't able to find that extra few tenths that Lewis Hamilton can that put him out. Whereas Perez, on the other hand, Perez is getting better week on week. Perez is improving week on week. And I always like to run with form. Form is good. It's encouraging. It keeps you motivated. And from what I've seen from Perez in previous teams as well, the guy knows how to pull a performance out of a car that necessarily might not be the best it can be. How many podiums has Perez had in a team that should never be on a podium? Perez is the guy that's done that. And I think he could do more so here at Red Bull. I've got faith that over this season and hopefully the next couple of seasons, if they stick with him, he could become a regular race winner and Red Bull could go on to win championships because Perez is there to back up or even beat Max Verstappen. You never know how the form might swing. So for me, Perez is definitely the guy I would choose over Bottas. Bottas, he's got to be careful. He's got to start delivering big time. Otherwise, questions are really going to start being asked by more than just me, who I think is quite clearly the first person to jump on the Bottas isn't there anymore bandwagon.
What are your thoughts, Harry? I know this Perez versus Bottas second driver battle isn't necessarily official, but that's definitely the way in which this season is heading. So if you were Red Bull and Mercedes, who do you have more trust in right now?
Look, we know how solid Perez is, and it's taken him a few races to get to the form we're used to from him, and today shows that he's getting there. But and I know Bottas had a terrible race today, but for the most part, Bottas is a very good. And no offense, Bottas, but it's a very good number two driver. He's always, for the most part, he's normally in the way for like Red Bull strategy or helpful to Mercedes strategy to help Hamilton when he's fighting against Verstappen. So I don't know who I would trust more. I think based on today, you'd obviously go Perez, but you can't just base it on one race. Bottas has done a solid job as a number two for many years. We know he's not as quick as Hamilton, but for Mercedes, they don't necessarily need that, and we said this before. So yeah, interesting one. I don't know who I'd pick. I mean, on current form, you might go for Perez, just the way the momentum's swinging. But yeah, look, he's had a tough time. Monaco, he was good, so he just didn't get the result he needed. So I'll keep the faith in Bottas for a bit longer, and that's nothing against Sergio, but just because I think Bottas has proven that he's a worthy number two, and Sergio's still getting to grips with that car despite the win today.
More botties for Harry is the overall conclusion of that.
Sad at the lack of botties, you know.
Yeah, it's a tough one because the most concerning thing for Bottas right now, he sat, I think, 6th in the championship after today's no score. Perez has elevated himself, of course, up to 3rd, so there's a few positions between them now, and theoretically, Bottas has been in that Mercedes seat for a long time. This is Perez's 6th race for Red Bull. So Perez should get better as the season goes on, where there isn't necessarily a reason to believe that Bottas will. So, Bottas needs to improve on what he's already done to this point so far. Bottas has had unlucky events this year. I wouldn't put Azerbaijan in that mix whatsoever. I know people have said that it was incredibly unlucky what happened to him in qualifying. Don't buy that. You need to go and put a lap in on both of your runs because that sort of thing can and does happen. But at least in Monaco, yes, he was very unlucky there. So that will even itself out. Let's not pretend that Perez has been completely lucky to this point. You remember Bahrain where he broke down on the formation lap and had to recover somewhat in that Grand Prix. Who do I trust more? It's tough. They're almost completely different drivers because Valtteri Bottas' clear strength is qualifying, and I would almost suggest he is Jarno Trulli-esque, choo-choo, because his strength is qualifying, and occasionally when the qualifying isn't there or he drops down the order for whatever reason, he doesn't have the overtaking prowess to make it back up. That's not his strength. Bottas is on his day a very quick driver. Over one lap, he's very, very good. And he has been a good number two driver for Mercedes for all these years. But when something goes wrong, when challenges arise, when he's down in the bottom half of the top 10 and he needs to make overtakes to get himself back up, Hamilton has the ability to do that. Verstappen has the ability to do that. Bottas doesn't have the ability to do that. So if we are going to see Mercedes not hold that dominance that we have done in previous years, those sorts of situations are going to crop up more and more, which doesn't suit Bottas at all. And I think Perez is completely the different driver in that qualifying is not his strength, but in terms of tyre preservation, in terms of race pace, he's usually on it. So who do I have more trust in? I want to see more from Perez, so I'm going to say Bottas at this point, but I'm not going to be a prisoner at the moment. Bottas's race in Azerbaijan was abysmal. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all, but you should almost feel all right about it to the degree that it should be a complete anomaly, and he might be back on it in the next race. I think he just literally has to get the chalk out because we're still in 2002 and draw a massive line under it, move on to the next one, pretend this didn't happen. That's how bad this was.
I want to come in quickly with a stat, Ben. I'm going to steal your job slightly.
Oh no!
I
You
know,
put me out of a
Stackman.
job.
Stackman! Beta version. Early access. Bottas, if you want to talk about him being a good number 2 driver, he has only come runner-up in the championship twice in the 4 completed seasons that he's had with Mercedes. And I think on other 2 occasions, he finished outside the top 3. On one occasion, when finishing second, he was only 9 points clear of Max Verstappen as well, so it wasn't exactly far off. I think this run of Bottas getting away with it, Bottas having to maximise a car that is far more dominant than the rest of the grid, I think Bottas has been flattered by the performance of that Mercedes after looking at the form. And this is becoming a regular question that people are asking now after races. It's not once a season this gets asked. It is every 4 or 5 races, someone goes, this has been bad again from Bottas. He hasn't delivered again now. For me, there hasn't been 3 seasons previously where I'm like, yeah, he's not as good as Lewis, but he's done everything he can. I think actually Lewis is dragging Bottas up a little bit in terms of the points that they've had if you look at history. And actually, I think Bottas hasn't delivered, probably when he should have done in the past. So that's why I would go Perez. I don't think this is a one-off, one-hit wonder. I don't think this is such a bad race with Bottas that it's made me sway my choice. Bottas has not been on it as much as he should have been for the last 3-4 years, I don't think.
I absolutely agree that the margin of error is much, much less for Bottas than it has been in previous years. When I say he's been a good number 2 driver, what I mean is they've won every Drivers' Championship and they've won every Constructors' Championship year after year. I would agree with you that, it's going to be more difficult for them to achieve that this year considering the level of competition. But certainly in 2017 and 18, the competition was there. 19 and 20, probably less so.
Ironic, those are the years that he didn't finish in second place.
Yeah, ironic. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see. Oh, come on, Bottas, you have to win a race. I can't let his prediction be right. Come on,
if I get that right, I don't care about a single driver prediction or a single constructor's prediction. That's the one I'm taking home.
We got the Russian GP. Yeah, it'll be fine.
Oh, that's true.
Yes.
Cancel. Write it off.
You forgot about that. And we've got Austria coming up as well.
Austria's in 2 races, isn't it?
He likes a good Austria. He likes a good Austria.
That's on a Sunday. He always organises himself a nice Austria.
We'll see how that